Good evening, and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Michael Romano, and I'm a partner with the national CPA firm McGladrey. McGladrey is a leading provider of assurance, tax, and consulting services focused on the middle market, and my role with McGladrey is the partner in charge of the life science practice here in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I'd like to remind our viewers this evening that from time to time, financial issues relating to life sciences or healthcare matters or companies may be discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since the program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, please keep in mind that the information may be dated. You should always check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. An additional reminder, here is how to send your questions to Money Matters to be answered on a future broadcast.
Answered on Money Matters, please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
I am pleased to have with me tonight as my co-host Charlie Huntington. Charlie is the Public Relations Chairperson for Pennsylvania Bio. Pennsylvania Bio is the voice of advancement for Pennsylvania's advanced bioscience industry. Its mission is to ensure Pennsylvania is the global leader in the biosciences by creating a cohesive community that unites our biotechnology, medical device, diagnostic, pharmaceutical, research, and financial strengths. Welcome, Charlie.
Thanks, Mike.
So, Charlie, you and I have done this before, and you're now with, you're the voice of advancement for PA Bio, the PR chairperson. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on with PA Bio, some of the issues and trends and challenges, and maybe what's kind of current on their agenda?
Yeah, I know we have a lot we want to cover tonight with our special guest, so I'm going to keep it really brief and just highlight one program, and that program is Life Science Future. And Life Science Future is our annual symposium in the fall. This year it's going to be October 29th. It's really the first time the industry in Pennsylvania has had a chance to get back together since the program, BIOS program over the summer that was hosted here in Philadelphia, which brought some 18,000 people out. So it'd be a great chance to reconnect, and I would encourage everybody to go to the Pennsylvania Bio website pabio.org, and get more details.
All right, great, thanks. I'm sure many people will benefit. I've been to the Life Science Futures event. It's a great event, so we look forward to that. Thanks.
Sure.
So with that, it is with great pleasure that I'd like to welcome our special guest this evening, Maurice Hampton, to our show. Maurice is Executive Chairman and General Manager of Telesis Therapeutics, a new startup and early-stage life sciences accelerator in the pharma and biotech space located here in Philadelphia. Maurice is also Chairman and General Manager of R-Cubed Enterprises, a holding company and business advisory and consultancy practice that he started in 2003, following many successful years in the pharma industry. With R-Cubed, Maurice has taken on many interesting assignments, most recently as business advisor and consultant for iSutica, a portfolio company of the venture capital firm Phoenix IP Ventures, also located here in Philadelphia. He's a serial entrepreneur and an accomplished executive, successful at leading strategy formation, market development, deal execution within corporate and entrepreneurial environments. Maurice's experience includes more than 15 years leading domestic and international pharmaceutical drug development, clinical research, marketing, and sales functions. He's had significant experience working with household names such as Merck, Merck, and Wyeth, and he's had the good fortune to work on some large blockbuster brands such as Mevacor, Zocor, Prilosec, and Enbrel. Maurice received his master's degree from the Roswell Park Cancer Institute and the State University of New York at Buffalo, and he went on to receive his MBA from the University of California, Berkeley Haas School of Business. He's currently working as an entrepreneur in residence and adjunct professor for entrepreneurship at the University of the Sciences, and as a business advisor for the QED program at the University City Science Center in Philadelphia. Welcome, Maurice Hampton, to the show.
Thank you. How you doing, Charlie? Mike, pleasure to be here.
We're doing well, thanks. So Maurice, many years of experience in the life science industry, so with big pharma and with some entrepreneurial startup type of ventures as well. We're here. I'd like to talk with you a little bit tonight about your latest venture, Telesis Therapeutics. Could you tell us a little bit about the impetus behind forming this latest venture?
Sure. And as you mentioned earlier, Telesis is an early stage life sciences therapeutic area company, and our goal is to basically develop early stage assets that we acquire from local institutions as well as universities and the industry as well. One of the things that we want to be able to do at Telesis is to basically accelerate therapies that are currently locked in the shelves and in the laboratories of a lot of the universities, and basically get those assets out into the marketplace and into the hands of patients who can actually benefit and use them. In terms of what motivated me to get involved and to want to be to start a life sciences company, it's been a long-standing goal of mine for quite some time. Right after finishing business school, and I went on to work at Merck, one of the things I realized is that always having had an entrepreneurial bent, one of the things I wanted to do was, after having such a heady experience there, I wanted to get started with an organization where I get an opportunity to sort of set the direction, set the tone. And one of the things I was able to do after leaving Merck was actually stick my head out and give that a whirl and try and get that done. Went around and spoke with a lot of the local VC firms at the time, a lot of the Safeguard, I think Pete Musser and Gary Anderson and those people that were driving those forces. That sort of got me going. But as I looked, and it was a bit more of a challenge than I thought it was initially. So I determined that it might make sense to get back into pharma for a bit, take a coffee break is what I had started off wanting to do, and joined Wyeth, which I intended to be just a short stint. And then 6 years later, I looked up and I was still there, having grown significantly, learned quite a bit, continuing to travel the world and develop new drugs. As I mentioned, having an opportunity to work on medicines like Enbrel there and other big pharmaceuticals. What I ultimately was able to do was get an idea from those experiences that I could actually go out now and raise the kind of capital and also have a vision for the ideas that I'd wanted to move forward. So I spent the next, from 2003 until now, developing the skill sets, the relationships, and also the vision for what it is I'd like to do and development of Telesis. So Telesis is actually a long time coming, as it were, for me, and I'm really excited about launching and forming this new organization and opportunities that we have with our new asset.
Great, thank you for that. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the specifics about Telesis targets, to the extent you can sort of elaborate a little bit, and maybe some of the therapeutic areas that you plan to focus on?
Sure. One of the things, Michael, as with Telesis, what we wanted to do or want to do is clearly we could be in a lot of different areas, but we thought that it would make sense for us to focus our activity into three key areas. One is oncology, two is dermatology, and three is pain and inflammation. And as you probably know, oncology is one of the areas that it's one of those areas that there's a lot of resources currently being spent and allocated to the oncology therapies with good reason. It's a huge unmet need, and cancer in particular represents. I don't think many of us don't know someone who's been afflicted with cancer, or have someone who's suffering from the debilitating nature of tumor and cancer progression. So one of the things that we chose was oncology because of the huge impact we believed that we could have in terms of helping, as well as the resources, everything, for most of the capital. If you check any of the asset venture capital charts or any of those things, about 30% of all of the money spent in developing new therapies is in the oncology area. And then we also chose dermatology because that's an area where we have a big KOL base. We know that area, we know people there. I've actually launched a few indications in that area with Enbrel. And pain and inflammation, Again, that speaks for itself in terms of our ability to get medicines, much like oncology, big area, lot of resources, and also we can see pathways to regulatory approval for partners that we bring on board down the road. Because again, I mentioned we're an early stage life sciences company. So our goal is we take medicines from the lab and then we move them up until the point that they're ready to go into humans. So that's kind of what we're doing not kind of, but that is actually what we are doing at Telesis. And so at that point, we are going to look for licensing partners to be able to work with us, either collaboratively to further development of these assets or to basically take on those assets themselves. So that's why we started and some of the focus for Telesis Therapeutics.
Maurice, I know that in Greek mythology, Telesis has a special meaning. What is the meaning, and why did you settle on that as a company name?
Well, after quite some thought and deliberation, one of the things we decided that Telesis for us, Charlie, it means progress conscientiously produced through intelligently directed effort. And so one of the things we like to do things, believe that for us, that lines itself up with how Telesis is going to be doing business. We conscientiously approach all the things we do, and it's about making progress through intelligently directed effort. And that progress we intend to make is taking assets and developing them. And the intelligently directed effort, we have a base of advisors and consultants, and both in the financial and scientific community, and that's where the intelligently directed effort comes from. We try to make sure that we have the best players on board to help guide and direct our efforts. One of the things we intend to do is to basically make sure we have the best scientists reviewing the work that we're doing, as well as accomplished alliance partners. We're not looking for people who actually that do one-offs or just do testing for us. We're actually in the process of forming and have formed solid relationships with the contract research organizations that we believe that are partners and to help us move and advance our therapy. So Telesis is essentially part of our branding. It's a part of who we are and what we want to be known by, both by the investor community as well as the scientific community and larger pharma community, because we fully expect that when they work with us or collaborate with us to license some of the assets that we bring to human studies, that we'd like to be able to have them understand a little more about our branding by what we say about ourselves and what we are able to do in terms of progress.
Makes sense. Makes sense. We've had a lot of guests sit in your chair, probably 36 over the last 3 years for me doing the show. One of the key challenges is when you're bringing a new drug to market, it's not for the faint of heart. And you've got financing questions. Every guest who sat in that seat has financing questions. How do you plan to address the financing part of your venture? And then what sort of hurdles do you expect to encounter along the way?
Well, Charlie, it's clear that I think entrepreneurship in general, as you well know, is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
I don't think that the people that sort of go or those of us who self-select to be entrepreneurs, we understand that there's a certain amount of risk associated with what we do. In my case, I make sure that I try to take calculated and thoughtful risk, but nevertheless, we understand that there's a certain amount of risk involved. Now, having said that, one of the fundamental components to when you engage in a particular project is you have to have confidence not only in yourself, your company, and what it is you're trying to do. And that's important as you engage people who might be able to help you along the way. And that goes for not only the investor community, not only from the institutions who actually license their assets to you, because that's their value. That's what they have. And in order for them to be able to get and reap the rewards from licensing or optioning and licensing assets to you, one of the things they have to have a certain amount of confidence in your ability to ultimately bring those things to market, get the proper partners, and to return the profit so they can do more research and get more things done. So to your point, I guess that's a long-winded way to say that first you have to believe in what you're doing in order to get from point A to point B. You have to have established an important network of individuals that believe in what you're doing. And that, again, both on the financial as well as on the institution side. And then in my case in particular, one of the things that we've done, and again, we achieve things, and we believe that through proper planning, we can get a lot done. And what I've done is, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've established a really solid network of accomplished executives, both on the financial and the scientific side, who have already begun to show interest. We've already reached out to some of them, the funding that we are going to need, both public as well as private. I think, and then there's even the semi-public, those that might be a consequence of some of the state funding, and they've subsequently gone on to make good investments and then make additional monies of their own. So we've already had, as recently as this week, and I speak to at least 2-3 times a week, outreach to those people who are actually going to be responsible, because funding is the oxygen.
Yes, it is.
For us to be able to move forward. So it's really fundamental and critical.
When you look at I'm just going to ask you a follow-up question. When you look at your peers who you interact with on a daily basis, I'm sure, as they're financing their companies, are these financing sources for young upstart companies who may be developing a drug or doing something within science? Are they appealing to investors who are outside of the business, outside of science, or is it pretty much the money's being found within the scientific community?
Well, I think that's a good question, Charlie, and I think every situation is different, because obviously if I have relationships that are outside the sciences,
they're going to come to you.
Believe in me, they're going to invest in me. I think my first deal that I did, I was able to raise millions of dollars, and through one VC group, and through a combination of equity and debt, was able to acquire my first company. That made it sound like it was easy, because that was then, and that was the particular business model. So again, and that was a relationship that I'd known for quite some time. So clearly, it can happen that way. I think for the most part, at least what I've seen in this business model, in the science, in the life sciences, there seems to be, since there is public funding available often to get some of these going, and of course the standard friends and family that's expected on some level, that's where a lot of companies start at my stage, at the early stage. And then also there's some seed funding that's available that we'll be accessing as well. I think you've hit on an interesting point, and there's been some things written about it recently. I think that there's an area that right after seed funding, the Series A funding can get a little squirrely. However, I think that we've taken that into consideration and will continue to do so, which is why our planning in terms of both, when we go for both public as well as private funding, it's with that in mind, and to make sure that we are asking and negotiating for the funds that we're going to need to take this up until the point where we can get it into man, as opposed to sort of stopping halfway and then having to
going gas pump to gas pump.
Exactly.
You want to
absolutely.
That's chess moves ahead on the board.
Lay this out, get players involved for the full dance, so that when the lights go out, we're all going to be able to, or when the lights come on, as it were, we're all going to be there at the same time, and we'll be able to get to the points that we need to. So again, we're looking at more than one asset. We're an accelerator, which simply means that we accelerate breakthrough therapies from research institutions. So we try to get them off the shelf and moving faster. So we're not just a one asset or one therapeutic area company, much like I explained and mentioned to Mike. So we're expecting to get a number of assets on board in-house and have them staged and moving through the process, so that we are just looking at one asset, but we're raising funds and hitting milestones, so that both our investor community as well as the potential licensing partners get some level of confidence and comfort as to what it is we're doing and how we're getting that done.
I can tell you that without the background you have, which I think is ideal for what you're trying to do, I don't know that, and in my limited exposure to this, I don't know that somebody could be successful, because what you're really saying is we're asking people to some degree to bet on the jockey, not on the horse, right? Because the horses could change in mid-race.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely, and I learned that from my first investors. I was looking around for different opportunities, and one of the phone calls was simply find out what it is that you're going to do. We're investing in you. We're investing in you. So you need to find out what it is that you can do and you can do well. And in this particular case, I think, Charlie, I'm ideally suited for this. This is actually one of the things, as I mentioned earlier with Michael, it's a long time coming. You know, both my academic, my professional, as well as my entrepreneurial background have all come together to allow me to be able to not only get this work done, but have a good time doing it and know that you're doing work that you can do well with and do good at the same time.
Good for you.
So you mentioned, Maurice, oncology, dermatology, and pain and inflammation. Is there a lead candidate or a lead therapeutic area that you plan to start with, or you're not at will to speak to that at this point, or?
Well, it's a good question, Michael. And one of the things is, it's funny when it's hard to be a life science entrepreneur without any assets to work with. And so we're really fortunate in that after a number of years, and anybody in this space understands it takes a while to both identify a proper asset and then to negotiate that asset. It is no short task in and of itself. So we've been fortunate in the area of oncology. We've actually been able to license our first asset. And it's an oncology asset for treating solid tumors. And one of the things that we're excited about is that it's an antimetabolite, and it's in a space that we've already had an opportunity to meet with some of the lead people over at the National Cancer Institute. And we've actually discussed, I sat down with our PI, and we went through our deck and looked at, and we also have some early lab and animal data with that asset. So again, when you have issued IP, when you have lab as well as animal data, I think you have a really good start at making a dent in what it is to be our vision of, again, progress conscientiously planned and produced by intelligently directed effort. And one of the things we've tried to do early on is get Telesis on the map with this new company, which is why we just formed the company last week. We launched the asset in January, and we're also actually even in early stage discussions with some additional assets, one in the oncology space and another in the derm space.
Great. Okay.
So we fully expect to we expect to file for one of our grants, a big government grant. I think that they have a small business innovation research grant, which a lot of early stage entrepreneurs avail themselves to, as well as scientists. We'll be filing that in September, and we fully expect to be able to before that time and after that time seek private funding as well. So it'll be a good mix to be able to have some public as well as some private funding to be able to advance the research. We've nailed down some clinical research partner that's going to be able to help us do this. And we got people that are credible, that people know their work, both from an industry standpoint as well as the capital angel / VC community as well. So that we have credibility, that they know that the dollars that they invest with you, the work that we need to do, will be developed in a way that gives us the best opportunity to win. And winning is really important in this game.
So I'm curious for our viewers, you just launched a company, you just licensed in an asset in the oncology space, so obviously very early on, here it is 2015. What kind of timetable might we be looking at? Like, if everything goes according to plan, when might this drug hit the market? You can just kind of educate, I know that it's very specific and unique to each drug, but just from an educational standpoint with our viewers, what might that look like?
Well, as opposed to locking myself into a time, I'll tell you a little bit about the process.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, and so one of the things you first have to do is, and what we're doing is, you have to make sure that even the data that we have, we're going to need to repeat that data with good laboratory practices, such that the work that we do will be acceptable to the FDA when we go to meet with them to talk about an investigational new drug. So everything we do from this point everything's going to be driven toward an IND package, essentially. So that means an investigational new drug package. So we're going to do that work, and that's where the contract research organization comes in. That's what we're going to need early funding for to get that work. And there's going to be milestones along the way. You want to make sure that those drugs, the drug that we're developing in this case, are an oncology asset. You're going to go through tox studies. You're going to do through a lot of those preliminary studies. We have to make sure we make a batch of it so that it's stable and it's going to work. And anyway, we do all of those things, and then we present that material to, as we have our pre-IND meeting with the FDA, and then we'll have a second. And then we move from there to, once we then get the drug into man, that's called our phase 1 study. And we get into man. And then phase 2 after that, and after that study is when you get into, again, phase 1 is healthy volunteers. Phase 2 is you're going to get into people who have the disorder, who have the particular disease potentially, and you're going to do, it's going to be a little slightly larger, but a little more targeted study. And again, at Telesis Therapeutics, our goal is to take medicines, again, as I mentioned, from the lab, from the institute, and then we move them up until IND, phase 1. Phase 2 studies are a little longer, a lot more expensive to do. And we would like to, at that time, or at least by that time, have formed enough of a relationship with a particular licensing partner that they would be interested in both collaborating with us and helping us through those later stages. Because again, we have a number of molecules, and we want to basically, and they will have been involved along the way. As I mentioned, I've just been in contact with a potential industry partner, and again, we just licensed the asset, but that's when we start. We start early, so they know what we have, we know what we have, and we can form the relationships with the strategic partners that would best benefit and have the ability to further develop this product with a much bigger bank account, as well as the infrastructure, the R&D infrastructure, as well as the follow-on sales force. So those are some of the steps that we see for ourselves. So it would be IND, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Our objective is to basically be able to hand off any time between IND to phase 2 stages, and that's kind of what our focus is and what we expect to be able to achieve. So, and that's a loose, idea about how the process works. The timing, it can vary depending on what you're able to agree on and what you're able to negotiate, and how soon you're able to raise the monies that you need for each of those steps, and how successful you are at milestones, and whether or not any of those need extra work, et cetera, et cetera. So that's
great. That's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to switch gears for a minute. You're also an entrepreneur. You teach entrepreneurship at University of Sciences. I'm sure that's something you enjoy, working with the students. We talked about that sort of in prepping for today. Can you tell me a little bit about what would you say is the single most important piece of advice that you would offer to your students when talking and teaching entrepreneurship? Is there sort of a single piece of wisdom or advice that you could think that you would that you talk to these students about?
Well, yeah. First of all, you're absolutely right. I have a blast working with the students. I mean, it's an intro to entrepreneurship, introductory course, where a lot of the students are still trying to feel that they've heard a lot lately, and just culturally, we've made major shifts in terms of how we're going to work and who's going to be doing the work. So entrepreneurship is something that a lot of them have been heard about but don't know a lot about. So
we got about 20 seconds, by the way.
I work with them, and one of the things I do tell them, though, if you have any interest in entrepreneurship, start now. Start now.
Great.
Don't wait, and have fun.
Great, thanks. Well, I'd like to thank our special guest tonight, Maurice Hampton, and my co-host, Charlie Huntington, for your time this evening. Thank you, guys. Our next guest will be Ken Milner. He'll be discussing real estate issues. And I'd like to remind our viewers that Money Matters is now available as an audible podcast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, listed as Money Matters, the podcast, for mobile devices. And the video is available on YouTube channel as well as our website. So thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you.